Well, hi, everyone. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Survival Skills for the Job Hunt series. And my name is Misty Ritter, and I am the Community Engagement Specialist in Economic Development located in Jefferson County, Missouri. This webinar series represents an outgrowth of some past collaborations between University of Missouri Extension, the Missouri Job Center, and the Missouri AFL-CIO. And today it is an honor to welcome Amber Allen and Amy Bartels, who are Extension Specialists in Human Development. So over the course of the next 2 weeks, we're going to continue to offer this series of webinars that will help you and others think about the changes in your life and how to embrace and prepare for a new career. And our experts are here to connect you with the resources and workforce experts that can help retool and find your next job. So I also want to inform you that this presentation will be recorded, but it will be stopped for the question and answer section at the end. So please feel free to post your questions in the chat feature or save your questions till the end of the presentation. So again, thank you, Amber and Amy.
All right, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today. So as our title says, don't be the average Joe, survive your career transition. Many of us right now, due to COVID and due to just all kinds of things, are in some type of transition. So we appreciate you joining us for the next, maybe an hour. Amber and I are gonna walk you through what to do. So I am Amy Bartels, and I'm located in Camden County, right in the middle of the state. And Amber is down in Greene County, and we serve kind of the lower and southwest portion of Missouri with Extension. So here are our objectives and kind of what we hope to cover for today. So the Kubler-Ross change curve is the well-known model. It's based on stages of grief, and it's designed to help people transition through job loss or transition. And Amber's going to walk us through each of these 4 phases. So there's denial, anger, exploration, and then acceptance. By understanding where you fall within the stages, you will be better able to minimize the negative impact of change and learn to adapt more quickly. And finally, we're going to talk about incorporating some of these new habits and strategies to help you manage stress, to make things a little bit easier, either right now or the next time you go through one of those seasons of change.
So like Amy said, I'm going to walk you through kind of the theory of how people process change, and you go through changes. I'm going to go through 2 different models. I'm first going to talk about the Kubler-Ross model and then follow it by the 4 stages of change model. But really all the models of change based in research have really been developed off this Kubler-Ross model. So this is a visible representation of change and how it affects your emotions and how you react in situations. So one of those first things you feel, especially when you hear about a job loss, is that shock and denial. It's not going to be me, oh, things might change, and you go into that shock and denial part of the curve. So up here, so you start to kind of go up. Then you start to kind of have some frustration. You might start bargaining. Well, can I do it this way or that way? Or maybe I could just get cut back a little bit of time. And so you start getting that frustration part of the model. And then you start to get into the depression stage, which is kind of that hopelessness. I'm never going to find another job. And you start to go into this disempowerment kind of part of the stage. And then you go into an empowerment. You start going up on the curve. You start to experiment. And what that means is you start looking at jobs or maybe a new career path. And then you start making decisions. I'm going to apply for that job. I'm going to update my resume. And then you do integration. And this means your new coping strategies, which we'll be learning today, going through the 4 stages of change, start to become part of your coping and moving and looking forward into the future of what your new jobs or paths can be. All of these are dictated, as you can see on the left, by morale or what your emotions you're feeling. And then the bottom half is dictated by time. And time can look different for everyone. You can go through these stages in days, or it can be weeks, or it can be months. So what I want you to know is this curve and model looks different for everyone. It's highly individualized. So when we're thinking about this, when you're thinking of individuals going through a job loss, or if you're personally going through it, know that everyone's stages might look different, and you might be in those stages at different times. So that is the Kubler-Ross model. And I don't know if Amy said this at the beginning, but feel free to put message or questions in the chat as you have them, and we'll be happy to answer those throughout or at the end of the program. So we know the basis of this model, and that is what developed the 4 stages of change model that was developed through research by Cynthia Scott and Dennis Jaffe in their article, Survive and Thrive in Times of Change. And so they broke this down into a 4-stage process, which is shown on this graph. And this shows that psychological process of how an individual responds to change. And we'll be walking through this and applying this graph and change curve throughout the rest of this program. So the key points that I want to talk about in this curve is, you can see it makes a U. And so this left quadrant is that denial stage, and more of, I'm still going to be active in my workplace. I'm not quite sure, maybe I can keep the change from occurring. And so you're probably very highly active during this time. And then you start moving down. You're still focused on the past, what could have been, what could this have looked like, but you start to resist the change. You start to say, I don't want this to happen. I don't want this to look this way. And so you start to have some of that resistance. And that's where you'll start seeing the Kubler-Ross model of some of that anger, that frustration that occurred, to kind of see them overlapped. And then in this whole time, you're focusing more on the external factors. Someone else, something else is causing this to happen. And as we go on to the other side, into those later stages, we're going to focus more internally on ourselves. How can we add coping skills to the job loss occurring? How can we start looking forward to that future of our new career path or that new job? So this is where we turn to future focus and self-focus, and we start to explore the things that can help this change be more positive and what could be seen as a negative situation. And then when we commit, we're committing to our new external environment, committing to our new goals and our new plans in this change curve. So we're really going to go in detail in the denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment different segments throughout this program, and how we can add new tips and research-based information to really help move through these changes, because change is inevitable, and we're using job loss today, but this can help with any change that you may be going through in any period of your life. So let's get started with the details. So we're going to go through these stages, that denial stage of feeling that change that feeling of change isn't sinking in. And we're ignoring that change is completely going to happen. And we're starting to feel that kind of disempowerment. And then we move to the resistance, and we start to understand the change is going to take place, but we don't like it. And we start to feel that disempowerment again. And the reason these are disempowerment and empowerment are those 2 key words that really stick out with the 4 stages of change and really make it different than some of those other models that you might see. And then we'll go through exploration. How during losing a job can we start exploring new ideas during our time of figuring out what's next for us in our future. And then we'll go through how can we add some coping strategies that can stay in our toolbox and make us committed for our next stage in our future. So with that, I'm going to move to the denial stage. And each of these slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then signs you can see in yourself or an individual that is in the stage of change. So denial is, like I said, you feel stuck in neutral. And you're worried about the job loss and how it'll affect you. You start having a fear of losing those Maslow hierarchy of needs of anyone that's taken a psychology class. So the psychological needs, that safety and belonging that you had, when it came to having a job, that security. And denial can sometimes be unconscious. You don't know that it's happening, that you're in denial. You might start having a lack of engagement or participating in discussions if you're still at that workplace, or even talking about maybe a job. Maybe someone says, hey, I saw a job opening. You just don't even want to engage and participate in the conversation because you haven't accepted yet that a job loss is either coming or has happened in the situation. You might start undermining or start sabotaging situations, maybe a good networking opportunity that could lead to another job, or start undermining people who are trying to help you during the process. You might have a feeling of apathy. You might be like, so what? It was just a job. I don't need to move forward, and kind of have that apathetic feelings towards jobs or employment. You might start being preoccupied with others. You might start getting into things that maybe can preoccupy your time, like maybe just zoning out the TV, or maybe it's getting very involved in what your kids or spouse is doing versus looking into what you need to be focusing on when it comes to looking towards those future choices of new job choices. And you might have a lack of understanding of the need for a change. Maybe you don't see that's necessary to change the career path or to change into a different job position because you just want to kind of keep it as is and don't want to accept that the situation of a job loss is occurring. And with that, Amy's going to tell you some coping skills that you can do when you're in the denial stage.
So take a deep breath. That was a lot of information. All of those stages really are pretty interconnected. And hopefully you'll see that as we go through this. But really this stress of losing a job or a job change, or maybe an anticipated job change, it can seem really pretty overwhelming. There are things that you can do to take control of your response to the situation. And so again, rather than just reacting kind of out of fear or the unknown, you get the opportunity to take control of your situation. So after each of the stages that Amber describes, I'm going to try to walk us through what are some practical ways of coping. So when we think about denial, this first stage can be really tricky. Denial is not only an attempt to pretend that the loss doesn't exist, but we may also be trying to absorb and understand what's happening in our particular situation or setting. So we might have some denial, but it might be really well-founded because maybe we're not given all the information. Maybe we don't fully understand what the whole picture is yet. So having that list of ways to cope, even when we don't even want to admit to ourselves that there is a concern, it might feel a little bit strange, but I want you to stay with me here. We're going to give you maybe some practical tips on this next slide. So I've got just a starter of a list here, but let's walk through these just a little bit. So while everyone grieves differently, there really are healthy and unhealthy ways to mourn a loss, whether that's a loss in your personal life or a loss in your job situation. That lack of engagement, that apathy, sabotage, even that comparison to others, those points that Amber just talked about, give yourself some time to adjust. And so when I even read those words, I mean, it kind of makes me want to go, right? Just take a breath. Be patient with yourself. You might be adjusting to some new routines, some new normal. You know, we hear that word now. That's kind of become a part of our language. So give yourself some time just to adjust to what that might look like. I don't know if you can see my setting, but I'm kind of back in a working from home situation. And so it's taking me a few minutes, literally a few minutes to kind of adjust to what that feels like again. The next point is accept the reality. Here's the thing. Your reality does not mean it's your forever, but it is your reality right now. So again, my office situation, and I'll just use this for my current example. Our office is undergoing some changes with the building. So it's not good for us to be there right now. And so we hope, fingers crossed, it's not forever, but it is our reality right now. And I'm feeling a little bit of that denial because I don't want to load my things up. And I'm grieving a little bit, that space that I had. So you can tell yourself, this is my reality, but it's my right now. It's not forever. The next one is avoid beating yourself up. Send some positive messages to yourself. Where do you need to hear those right now in your life? Where's somewhere that you might be playing that loop in your mind that says, oh gosh, you know, this is my fault. I could have done better. I always, or I never. Think about how you can change that into that positive message where you're building yourself up. Because you might be the only one right now that's doing that. And that might be your right now reality. The last one on the list here, kind of in this denial phase, is really be on the lookout for red flags. You can watch for these potential pitfalls. So things like, am I binging on Netflix, or am I binging on junk food? Am I having maybe several glasses of wine instead of one in my week? Because those kinds of things will leave you feeling really, you know, kind of good in the moment and then really bad in the long run. So being aware of these 4 things, and I'm sure you might have others that you can add. This is the denial phase. These are some of those ways that you can cope. So Amber's going to move us on to the next phase.
Yes, and as we're going through each of these phases, know that they can build upon each other. So just because you're using coping strategies or having those signs of the stage previously doesn't mean they'll go away as soon as you move to the next stage, or those coping strategies won't work. So remember that as we're going through. So resistance. During this stage, we understand that the change is taking place and we can't ignore it. And we started to accept the reality, but we're still resisting it. And going back to Amy's analogy with her office, she might be accepting it, but there might be that one box that you keep there to resist to make it a completely true situation. And that resistance usually is exhibited through some sort of emotional charged up surge. So maybe a form of frustration, anger, maybe you just start crying, anxiety, and you start having that fear of the unknown. And sometimes it starts voicing out as opposing of the change. So opposing job loss, or maybe saying negative things about coworkers or type of career field. And you might start to complain instead of looking at new options. So you might start having those negative emotions of complaining, or kind of looking at the glass half empty situation instead of looking at where can I go in my future. You kind of get stuck in that past situation. You might, like I said, assign blame or anger or sarcasm to a person or the situation during the resistance stage. And this kind of summarizes all this last point. Start focusing on what's wrong, not the future. Where can we go? What were some positive things I learned at this old position? We start focusing on what was wrong in the situation, or what could have we done better, and looking at more of that negative side of things during resistance. I will say, as we move into coping for this one, resistance is that final stage before we start going into that next part of the U. So this is a very critical stage when we're in the resistance stage.
Absolutely. So complaining, oh my goodness, I think we've probably all been there, right? It's just going to be a little post on Facebook. It's no big deal. Maybe that blame game, right? It's their fault. It's not mine. Or maybe you focus that all in. It's all my fault, right? And the micro-focusing. So micro-focusing really kind of narrows down what you're seeing. And again, it doesn't allow you to see the bigger picture. So it's really been said that the only constant is change. And if you live in Missouri, I'm sure you've heard of that reference in terms of the weather, right? If you don't like the weather, just wait 24 hours or 10 minutes. So learning to quickly adapt is how we survive in this quickly evolving environment. We have to have our survival skills really sharpened. But what does that mean as far as managing our stress and really learning skills to cope with all of this change? So again, I've got a list of 4 different points up here. This comes from some research that was done by Forbes, actually. Resistance is a normal reaction. This is normal. It's normal to kind of be down in the bottom of the U for a little bit. So acknowledge that it's okay. And then you can begin to overcome it by exploring. And we're going to get to that part next. So you can ask yourself some questions like, what am I resisting? And be really specific and honest with yourself. Because often what we resist is categorized into what we can and we can't control, right? So focus on what you can control. We have a pandemic, okay? We can't control what's happening globally, but we can control what our response is and how we're reacting to that situation. So focusing on what you can control, including your gradual acceptance of the change, and maybe finding others who can help. Try to let go of what you can't control. Again, that kind of that bigger global picture. If politics and the tug of war, like I had in that puppy picture there, really causes you a lot of resistance, you can guide yourself away from that. Remember this, your thoughts don't always equal facts. So challenge your own thoughts. Ask yourself questions and be willing, again, to be honest with yourself. I mean, change can actually be fun in some ways. Change brings opportunity, right? When one door closes, another one opens. I mean, there's all those little kind of sayings, and you really can help with those positive messages to yourself to challenge some of what you're telling yourself to make sure, is this true or not? And do I have control over this or not? And then finally, look for your strengths. So change might come really easily for some, and for others, it can really be a challenge. This might be a good time to take one of those, free online strengths quizzes and see where it is that you really have strengths, because you can, by changing these thoughts and kind of changing the messages that you're telling yourself, you can rewire your brain. All right, let's move into the next phase. This is a good one.
Yes, so if you remember the grid at the very beginning, the graph, we were in denial, we were in resistance, and we were kind of in the middle of the U now. And remember, this happens individualized pace. This could be weeks, months, days, depending on the person. But we've been very past focused and really what could have happened. And we're moving into now what is going to happen. What can I look forward to? What are my new goals? So this stage of exploration is when you start to build up those coping and adaptive mechanisms to tackle your resistance and focus on those futuristic priorities and goals. And so we're moving from that disempowerment to now we're re-empowering ourselves and encouraging others around us to do the same. We're trying out new processes, which I know can be scary. We're testing things out gradually, so we haven't committed to anything yet, but we're starting to kind of dip our toes in the sand of what's working, what's not working. I want to say this stage is very sensitive and tentative, as for any wrong step, you can go back and revert back to the resistance stage of change. So this is a very pivotal stage in the 4 stages of change. This is how we're built. This is the stage we're really using those coping mechanisms and building them up to not move back to resistance. This is also when we start focusing from external factors to focusing internally. Like Amy said, taking those strength tests, looking about what can I improve upon? What am I doing well? How can I use what I have inside of me to apply for that job? Am I charismatic? Do I have experience that would be good for a job application I saw? Do I need to come up with a new certification? And really focusing inwardly on what can I do and what can I motivate myself by, whether that's internal or externally. We start to be future focused. We start to say, where do I want to see myself in a month, in a day? Small steps. You know, you might have that 5-10 year goal, but when we're going through the 4 stages of change, small wins in our future are good ones. You know, maybe that future focus of next week I'll put a job application in, or I'll do some research. But we start to get that future focused in the exploration stage and start trying new things or putting new job applications in maybe a job we hadn't thought of before. And like I said, we start building up those coping mechanisms, whether that's, you know, exercising daily, taking a breath, taking a break. Maybe it's moving that last box out of your office and saying, okay, now I'll go through the box next week as my future goal. So building those coping mechanisms that are going to be best for you and the individuals that you're around to help you move forward during a job loss and really move forward to that next job or that next path you choose.
So where's your focus? And that's not a rhetorical question. Really, where is your focus? It can be internal or it can be external. Change is one of the natural flows of life that occurs often, even when we don't want it to, right? We said change is inevitable. It's going to happen. Being open and flexible to change has helped lots of people to rewire their approach by going along or embracing change versus trying to control it. After all, change can be a good thing. So go ahead and change your lens, and then you open yourself up to those possibilities. So I want to go through some steps here. I've got, again, four bullet points up there, but let's talk about these. So the first one is learning to be more open and flexible. And again, I want you to focus on that word learning. Being open and flexible when you're stressed and when things are kind of seeming like they're out of control, that's a tough one. Go back a couple of steps where I said, be kind to yourself, right? So that learning to be more open and flexible, you can do that by really checking your mindset. Are you a fixed mindset or are you a growing mindset? By adopting that learning mindset that, hey, I'm open to some possibilities here. This is really your time to dream. What did you always want to do? Or where do you see yourself? This is a little bit of goal setting, but it's really kind of opening up that thinking that you're doing right now while you're exploring. Peruse some job sites, get your web pages up to speed, right? You might need to check in with someone else, like a trusted friend or a mentor or a coach. What do you need to know? What are you missing, right? Amber just talked about that. Is there a class you could take or a training or a certification? And again, think about those soft skills. We don't talk a whole lot about that in this presentation, but my goodness, what's your phone voice look like? How is your Zoom presentation? I have a downturned mouth. That's just the way that God made me. So I have to really focus when I'm trying to engage someone to make sure that I'm making my face look pleasant or my voice sound really resonating with people, speaking clearly. Those kinds of things are great things right now while you're exploring to practice. So thinking about technology, searching for opportunities to enhance what you already know and becoming better at it. All right, we're ready for the last spot.
Okay, we have made it all the way through the U. We are now to the commitment phase. And this is the stage when an individual, we have re-empowered ourselves and we've accepted our new methods and new processes, and that change is occurring. It's important that in the commitment stage, we start establishing what our goals are going to be, who's going to be our support system, and who's going to back us up and give us appropriate recognition and define our role and accountability while we're looking through the job process and committing to either a new job or sending applications. The commitment stage is going to be individualized, where you feel you need to be at to feel committed to these new coping strategies. It's going to be a coordinated effort. We don't live in a bubble. We have support systems of some kind, whether that's friends or family, that can help us through this commitment phase, saying, you know, I've worked really hard. I resisted this at first. I started to explore some new skills, like Amy talked about, or new technology. And now I'm ready to commit to, you know, I'm really good at Zoom. I think I would do something great with computers. You know, I want you to help me search for something like that, and helping them hand in hand in that process. And this is where proactive input is good. They start at first in that denial phase. It was, I don't want to talk about this. I'm not giving input. And now it's proactive, like, I think I would like to do this in this type of way. Or, yeah, I'll apply for that job. And that very positive, proactive input happens in the commitment stage. And they're always looking, in this stage, we're always looking for the next challenge once we've gone through that change, whether it's, I'm going to get that certification now, or I'm going to apply for that job that back in resistance exploration, I wasn't sure if I could handle, but now I feel like I can. And so I'm going to go for that next challenge. Because like we said during all this, commitment is when you've come to the conclusion that change is inevitable, but you're ready to take it on proactively and with some goals in mind and committing to that next step in your career. And so with that, Amy's going to tell you some ways to do that.
All right, so we're going to talk about this last one, coping through commitment, because really staying committed for the long haul, it might take 6 months or even a year to transition into something new. And that job loss or that job transition, or even just the worrying about losing a job that you wrap your whole identity around, can lead to physical and psychological illness. And it can really make it difficult for you to reimagine yourself should you need to launch a new career, right? So pay close attention to that part. Career expert Barbara Moses says, while it might seem admirable to be that committed to what you do, a title shouldn't define who you are. It should always be who you are that counts. So not your title, but who you really are. So let's look at our 4 bullet points for this one. So I have a sign in my office. It is still actually hanging in my office, and it reads, be the person you want to work with. So who do you want to work with? Think about that right now as you're in this commitment phase. Reach out, join a new group maybe, learn a new skill like we talked about. But remember that this time frame might be longer than you expect. So be prepared to go the distance. Now is the time, if you haven't, to openly communicate with those closest to you. So family, friends, let them know your plan, let them know what you're thinking, but most of all, just let them know what's going on with you. So if you're not familiar with the SMART plan, this is a really neat way to create an action plan to kind of get you motivated. It helps you to break big goals into small lists or small tasks. So looking at a job list, creating some employment strategies, being really solution focused, right? So the first part of those SMART goals is to be specific. That means you're going to be simple, sensible, and significant about what you're looking for. Okay, so saying that you're going to, at 50 years old, become the next Michael Jordan, and you've never played basketball, that's probably not going to be very attainable. So that probably wouldn't be part of your SMART goal. The next part of SMART is it measurable? And you can ask yourself some questions. Is it meaningful to me? And does it motivate me? So can I go the long haul? Would I really see myself moving into this type of job? The next one is the achievable. So I'm never going to play in the NBA, I promise you. I can't really even catch very well. So that would not be achievable or attainable for me. It needs to be something that I've kind of agreed on, both with myself and with those closest to me, that this is a SMART move for me. The next one in SMART is relevant. So is this a reasonable goal? Is it realistic? Do I have resources to help me attain this goal? And will I get results if I go after this? And then the last one is T, and that's time bound. So give yourself some deadlines. If you're a list maker, or if you like to operate off of a calendar, whether it's on your watch or your phone or your computer or the old paper kind, give yourself some parameters, time-based, time limited. What's the cost associated with it? Are there deadlines for applying for certain jobs or signing up for certain classes or certifications, those kinds of things? Those SMART goals are really going to kind of help you along that track of going the long haul and staying committed to this. Finally, remember to make some time for you. So self-care, things like nutrition, getting good sleep, having some downtime, maybe incorporating a new mindful practice like yoga or breathing or meditation. And then finally, have some fun. So find some time, whether you're in between jobs or you are on a downturn or whatever is going on with your situation, you might find yourself with some extra time on your hand. Start a new hobby, or just do something silly. Have a dance party in your living room with your family. Do something silly that's going to make you laugh and that's going to be just for you. So remind yourself finally that this might be your story right now, but this is not where your story ends.
Yes, and so before I move on to the next slide, I do want to answer a question that I saw come through the chat. And I don't know who all can see the chat, so I'll just read it out loud. It says, denial and resistance can cause stress and sometimes de-stress. So helping people with that de-stress can help people move out of their first stages of change. And absolutely, having that support system, and if you know how to handle those type of situations or give them coping strategies that could possibly work for them, like maybe saying, hey, you want to go on a walk with me? Or, hey, do you want to go volunteer with me? Because volunteering can also be a way to have that socialization, but also building camaraderie, but it also feels good to help others. So that's always a good way to help de-stress a situation. And even fake smiling and laughing can as well. So there's many different ways, but yes, helping someone in that de-stress situation can help them get out of those stages into other stages of change as well. So hopefully that answered your question. And with that, I'll go and talk about the review of what we learned. We learned about the Kubler-Ross change curve and Scott and Jaffe's 4 stages of change, and we've applied those changes: denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment, and how new habits and strategies can help you manage that stress and help make these things easier the next time you go through a season of change, whether that's applying to a job loss or to other things in your workplace and or just life in general. So that is as a review. Feel free to put questions in the chat, but we do want you to answer these 2 questions. What is one thing you learned from this presentation? And what is one coping strategy you plan to incorporate into your list or into your life? And if you're a list maker, you'll put it on your list that's in your life. So feel